Welcome everyone to our webinar on Comic Cons in Libraries, called Comics and Libraries: The Pros and Comic Cons. I'd like to start today by acknowledging that as a national group based across the land that we call Australia, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. I'd specifically like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the custodians of the land where I'm speaking, and I would like to pay respects to the elders past and present of all First Nations peoples across the land and thank them for their rich storytelling traditions. And I encourage you to put the traditional lands that you're joining us from in the chat if you would like to. So yeah, we've got a very packed session today. We've got some wonderful guests joining us. We've got Stacey O'Brien from Wollongong City Libraries, Philippe Jeges from Kingston Libraries, Dennis Cahill from Inner West Libraries, and Sarah Hopkins and Sabina Wills from Your Library, which was formerly Eastern Regional Libraries. They've all been involved with running comic events, Comic Con type events in their libraries, and they joined us to tell us a bit about how that's worked. Now, because it's packed, we're going to run questions. You can ask questions at any point, but we would ask that you just put them in the chat, and we've got wonderful other members of the committee here. So the Allographic Committee, we've got Mia and Gabby and Jurgi are all here, and they'll be helping keep track of the questions there, and we'll get to a point towards the end where we can ask some of those questions. I should say I'm James. I think I missed introducing myself. I'm the secretary of Allographic, and I'm also a librarian at the Melbourne Athenaeum Library down in Melbourne, Victoria. So and the other thing, this webinar is being recorded. If anyone has any queries or concerns about that, you are welcome to let us know after the session by emailing allographicinfo@gmail.com. So without any further ado, I'm going to throw over first to Sarah Hopkins and Sabina Wills from Your Library, and they will talk about their first ever extravaganza. So.
Thank you, James. It's Sarah here, and Sabina is with me and will be helping to answer questions. So we have prepared a short presentation, which I'm going to share with you now. Here we go. So we also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and Sabina and I are also both on Wurundjeri country in Victoria. So who are we? I am a librarian. I've worked in libraries for 30 years. I am the customer experience manager, so my role is all about the outward-facing parts of the library. I'm very passionate about reading and using imagination. And yes, this was the very first time I'd been to work dressed up as a princess. Sabina is new to libraries. She has a background in engineering. She also has a fine arts degree. She works as a comic book artist as well as running a library, and has really raised the profile of comics as a way of expressing creativity and imagination in our organisation over the last 3 years. And this year, she's also been heavily influenced by her Year 12 son's English textbook, particularly coming to grips with Gothic horror, which I think might be influencing her next comic book creation. So what we did, we ran what we called a comics and cosplay extravaganza at our Lilydale Library right at the end of August. And why did we do that? So like most of you probably, we thought the Comic Con was a way of bringing worlds and imagination and comics and people who perhaps we struggle to attract to libraries together. We had some specific issues that we were addressing. Lilydale Library is located on a TAFE campus. That means we have access to a really large open area in front of the library, which is suitable for holding the extravaganza. But it also means that the library is located slightly out of town and not on the way to anywhere else. So we have a constant challenge to bring people to that library. And both the TAFE and us are, interested in connecting with young people. So that was a target audience for both of us. Plus, we have had a graphic novel collection for a long time, which we really want to promote, and we want to promote graphic novels as a legitimate form of reading. And we have recently subscribed to Comics Plus, so that became a launch pad for our Comics Plus program. So the things that we did that worked best were starting with our staff. Not an original idea, but definitely the best one. So we just put out an all-staff email, and we have about 120 people who work in our libraries because we cross 3 council areas, who would like to be involved, that they would have to dress up. So what were they going to dress up as, and what would they like to do on the day? And we got a really strong response from people who were passionate about their niche area of interest and who were thinking about what skills they would bring on the day. And I'll talk a little bit more about the staff coming up. We didn't take bookings for any of the things that we ran on the day. We let people just join them if they were there. And we feel that on the whole, that worked quite well. We were lucky that we had an all-weather location, so it didn't matter what the weather was doing, we were going to be able to run our day in the space that we had prepared. We had lots of free activities, and we got really good response for running those. So we had our library staff running lots of things, and we paid for the face painting, the photo booth, the temporary tattoo, so there was no cost to the public for those particular things. So for families, they could have a low-cost day. There were things to buy, and there was food, and there were people selling things, but they were very much optional to the other stuff that was running across the day. Setting up the space is probably something that you can't spend too much time on. We were really lucky to have Sabina's civil engineering background come into play, and she mapped that area extensively and repeatedly over quite a long period of time to make sure we could fit everything in, we could have people moving around, it would be clear where to go. Even so, we probably would have changed things a bit if we were doing it again. And the last thing was we gave ourselves a fairly small window, short, tight window, just 4 hours, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we had everything running across that time. So what did it actually look like on the day? Well, the library is located inside a bigger building, so we don't have an accurate door counter, but we had 1,600 people through the library on that day, on that Saturday. And the week before, on the Saturday morning, regular library opening hours, only 60. So we feel like that's an indication of the numbers of people on campus, because lots of people wouldn't have even come into the library. We had library staff making badges, and they pumped out 170 badges, and that badge making was really popular all day. We had caricatures being drawn by a local artist called Danny Zemp, and after 30 he stopped counting, but there were people walking around with their caricature portraits all day. Our biggest expense was our staff. We had 18 people working on the day, including me and Sabina and the other 2 members of the organising committee. We had a budget of $10,000, which we pretty well stuck to, and our biggest expense was our staff. So from midday onwards, it's time and a half for our library staff. Because it was a partnership with Box Hill Institute, they provided extra cleaners and security. So that was a big help to us. And Comics Plus contributed prizes for our competitions. So it was an expense we didn't have to do. We had a special tribble stall from 2 staff, one of whom is a rusted on Trekkie, and 130 tribbles were made on the day. So our best ideas were lots of the free stuff, the badge making. We had a children's librarian who loves to make things. She made a cardboard TARDIS for the children's area. She made a life-sized phone booth. The photo booth asked us if they wanted us to make digital photos to send to people's phone or printed out old style strip photos, and we went for the strip photos. So people were walking around with their photos. Some of them made badges out of their photos. So having that something in people's hands, I think, was really fun. There was a queue for their tattoos all day. We had a drawing wall, so we just covered a wall with bits of paper and put out some textures, and people were drawing on that all day long, and people of all ages. I saw that idea at DandyCon and thought it was really clever. We also had a quiet space that people could go to if it all became too much. And there was quite a degree of neurodiversity amongst the audience, and there were definitely some people making use of that quiet space. The Jump Punch comic people offered to do a free fighting demonstration on the day. That was a bit of a spontaneous thing, and that was very well attended, particularly by small boys. And we had a zine making stand, again, run by library staff, using leftover magazines, and there was a continuous stream of people just, doing their own stuff. So here are our staff. They really went to great lengths to dress up and be part of things, and that definitely gave a great flavour to the whole day. We didn't have to employ anyone to work as performers because this is a children's officer and a customer service officer who could not wait to run our cosplay stage. These are our Trekkies on their tribble stand, including the world's largest tribble, we believe. The woman on the left, Laura, is a very keen dressmaker, and she made her Star Trek uniform, and she did a time release video, speeded up video of herself making it, which we were able to use on our social media as part of our comms leading up to the day. More staff dressing up. You can see Ike in his Superman costume on the right, posing in the phone box. We had a staff member dedicated to tech, and he worked all day, not just on our tech, but everybody else's. So that is something that you absolutely must have. We had a local from Healesville that Sabina roped in, Jim Bridges from the Australian Cartoon Museum, who happens to own a couch, you can see in the background, covered in characters, and that couch was full of people taking photos of themselves all day. So again, the couch just sat there, but that was a big hit. So things that we would do differently next time is we would be much more upfront about what's free and what's not, so make that a real selling point. We had a handout that was a map on one side and a list of what was there on the other side, but we still felt people were a little bit lost, and we might do it a bit differently next time. We would make our drop-in sessions shorter and sort of start and finish them more quickly. We ran the Dungeons and Dragons as introductory sessions, but what we found is that most people who turned up actually wanted to find out where a local group was where they could play. And we would do more promotion of Aussie indie comics, which is one of Sabina's passions, and that we just ran out of time and space on the day. So that's us. If you want to ask us any questions after this event, please feel free to email us. And as Sabina always says, keep reading comics.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sarah. We're going to move on to Dennis Cahill from Inner West Libraries, who Inner West Libraries have been running the comic conversation for quite a while. So I'll hand over to him now.
Okay, so Comic Conversation was established in 2014 at Ashfield Library. It was an annual celebration of comics culture where it was a series of workshops, discussion panels, and an artist alley where local comics and zine creators would share ideas, contacts, and then their work as well with the inner west community. COVID put a stop to that in 2019. It was actually a pretty big event previously. We would collaborate with other councils and library services. I believe the last one before was ran for roughly 2 weeks with different events at different locations over that time period. We brought it back this year. We gave ourselves a timeline of 6 months. Bearing in mind, though, that us as a programming team here, we work 3 months in advance. It was 3 of us that were working together, myself, a graduate librarian, and the programming coordinator. We met in January to discuss programming ideas and budget, and then we met every 3 weeks thereafter to update all of our assigned duties with each other. We wanted it to be all-encompassing with the events with adults and youth and kids, so we divided the labour between the 3 of us and we started researching. We decided to reach out to Queenie Chan, a comic creator who had collaborated with previous comic conversations to give us a better understanding of current trends and the local scene. The meeting introduced us to the term comics adjacent. This meant things like cosplay, kawaii, and zines. So we expanded our remit to include these things, and we just started pitching program ideas to each other. A staff member who originally organised the event, Karen Dwart, is still with the library, and she was consulted as well, so background was given on the previous programs. Collaboration with the various stakeholders was important to us, as we all had different thought processes. For example, staff variously thought that zines were a form of political protest, a form of self-expression, and a way to document hyper-local scenes and communities like local bands. All those things are true about zines, so we wanted to honour that. For outreach, we reached out to King's Comics, a comics retailer in Sydney, to see if they were interested in partnering with us with some programs. Given the popularity of manga and anime, another organization that we reached out to was the Japan Foundation, which is a non-profit cultural organization established by the Japanese government to promote cultural and intellectual exchange between Japan and other nations. They were supportive of the idea of collaboration, but at the end, nothing came to fruition. With King's Comics, they supplied some prizes for various cosplay programs that we ran, and they also had a stall on the day. Following on from our meeting with Queenie Chan, we also reached out to zine organisations such as Otherworlds and the Sticky Institute in Melbourne. Otherworlds did not reply, and with Sticky Institute being based in Melbourne, they were happy to converse and suggest some Sydney-based creators, but ended up not being involved. Here's what we did on the day. The Artist Alley had 28 exhibitors, which included zine creators, comics creators, local publishers, and King's Comics. We did an artist lab, which was a live drawing event, which was passive and on a large screen in the Artist Alley. Children's zine workshop, where they made their own zines that was aged for children ages 5 to 12. Cosplay competitions for youth, kids, and adults. 3 was a panel of 3 judges who had a rubric which they used to determine the winner. What else did we have? A cosplay installation. So we had some passive programming around the library at the time from a Sydney-based professional cosplayers' work. We did 2 Dungeons and Dragons sessions. They ran concurrently. It was like a beginner one-shot to get people interested in the Dungeons and Dragons itself. We've subsequently started a Dungeons and Dragons monthly program at our Leichhardt branch. In conversation with Nicola Scott. Nicola Scott is a Sydney-based artist who has worked for DC in the past. She's also done a lot of creator-owned work. A Kickstarter Substack panel. We had 4 Sydney-based creators discussing how they use Kickstarter and Substack to fund and promote their works. That particular program was aimed more at creators than the public at large. We had 2 Magic the Gathering workshops. This was also designed similar to Dungeons & Dragons as an intro to the game. And we had a zine and community discussion panel where we had 3 local zine makers discuss their zine journeys and what the future of the format may be. If that seems like a lot for one day, yeah, it was. We had 5 areas that we used throughout the day. We basically took over the library for the whole day. We used a large town hall for the Artist Alley, where we had, again, 28 different exhibitors. The children's area of the library we used for all the children's programs. We had the study room for the Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, and another study room for the panels. The library was open for regular business during the event as well. For promotion of the event, we sent the Artist Alley EOIs through the library's website and the council's website and the socials. I went through paperwork from previous years and found email addresses of previous participants and sent out emails to them. Council did social media engagement through the promotions team. On the day, we had staff t-shirts with the logo made. And on the day, we had 11 staff for the event, with jobs ranging from room setup to artist alley wrangling, introductions of events, outreach, and facilitating events. Me personally, it was very much a blur, running around checking to see how other people are doing, if they needed filling in and things like that. It absolutely poured that day. Absolutely poured. So we had issues with our paper signage, which just disintegrated after about half an hour of rain. So that was making wayfinding quite tricky. Things we missed and stuff that we learnt on the day. Near the date of the event, a staff member asked about safe spaces, low sensory areas, which Sarah mentioned before, where people could go if the artist alley was a bit overwhelming. It was too late in the process to accommodate this, as all the public areas had been accounted for. But staff, we did see that that would be something that we would be using in the future. A tip for guys, if everyone here, is to onboard your marketing team well. Our marketing team kind of didn't get it. They thought it was a bit niche. Like, they're great at marketing to library users, but the community that we were trying to reach aren't all library users. One problem that was out of our control is a council mandated block on TikTok, which limited our outreach to that demographic. The waste signage, as I mentioned before, it worked for the first half an hour and then it was just too wet. One thing I would also recommend is learning your building's foibles. I work Monday to Friday, I don't work weekends usually. Didn't realize that the lifts in the library are turned off on a Saturday. So didn't realize that until the day, so we had to find extra wayfinding materials for that on the day too. One thing I would also recommend as well is the word redundancy pops into my head, but it's the right word, but not the right word to use, in that we had a staff member who was going to take photographs on the day, but they dropped out. So we had to get another staff member to do photography on the day who wasn't as across the technology as the previous person. So the photos could have been better, could have been worse, but yeah, we were happy with it at the end of the day, but having redundancies in mind for those kind of things was a good idea. Feedback from the exhibitors was good and positive. It ranged from some thought that interacting with Kings was a bad idea because people would be more likely to buy a Marvel book or a DC book than take a chance on an indie. Others thought they were positive in that they liked the event that came through, and they didn't really have high expectations coming back after COVID. But all in all, it was a good event on the day, I think, but due to the rain, we didn't have the expected numbers that we were expecting. But we're looking forward to taking these lessons and learned and on to next year's. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dennis. And next up, we've got Fel Jeges, who is a passionate children and youth services librarian who champions the integration of emerging technologies and games in libraries. His initiatives bring people together, igniting curiosity and excitement within the library and the broader community. He's been working on King Kong since its inception, bringing a comics, games, and pop culture community convention to Kingston libraries since 2023, and he's proud of the success of KingCon and is excited to see it grow in the future. So take it away, Philippe.
Thank you very much. I feel very hoity-toity having sent that through and no one else got that introduction. So anyway, moving on. Thank you. Yes, I'm Philippe or Fel, working with Kingston Libraries as a Children and Youth Services librarian. And City of Kingston and I proudly acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners and custodians of the land that I'm presenting and working from. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and as well as any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander community members with us today. So King Con is a comics, games, and pop culture event that we have been running for the past 2 years and heading into the future now. Held at our Cheltenham Library in May of 2023 and May 2024. It was a jam-packed day with something for the whole family. We had graphic novel authors and artists giving talks about their work and running workshops. We had Minecraft mini games, Mario Kart tournament, where we 3D printed or laser cut a trophy depending on the year. We had VR headsets for people to try, had board games for people to play, and introductory D&D sessions. We also had food trucks as well as cafes within walking distance to the library. And in the first year, we didn't know how many people we could expect to come along, so we printed out some vouchers for free coffees and twisty potatoes for those who got in early. This year, we changed the location of the food trucks. We had them first in the car park, so we took away a few parking spaces and had the food trucks there. But this year we sort of made it bigger. We moved it to we have a park adjacent to the library and had the food trucks there to really activate that space. Yeah, we also had face painters there. Oh, hang on, that's the next one. If that all wasn't enough, we also had a LARP group doing mock battles in full armor. We had Lightsaber Dueling Club giving demonstrations. We brought on Star Wars cosplay groups to do some photo ops for people. We had a superhero story time for our younger attendees, a cosplay parade and competition with prizes. This year we had prizes donated by Comics Plus as well. We've recently signed up with them and they did some sponsorship for our event. We also had some cosplay workshops where we brought in a company that would lead their participants through creating their own armor pieces out of craft foam. We had a badge maker, which was so popular it broke. We had face painters, and this year we also introduced an artist alley. It was something that we'd wanted to have from the beginning, but we couldn't figure out how to make it work the first year. Moved some things around after we've learned this year, and we got 5 stalls in our artist alley. So we got a lot of great feedback from our event partners and attendees. The first year, like I said, we had no idea how many we were expecting to get. We thought, man, maybe 400 or 500 people, but we ended up having over 1,700 on our door counters, which was a clear indication to us that our community wants chances to get together and share their passions. Our second attempt built on the success of the first, with it's not the best way because people were in and out and sort of avoiding the door counters as well, depending on how they got into the spaces. But our numbers showed over 2,200 people attending the library that day. And even though we had more people, because we were able to move some of the shelving around this time and rearrange some things, it made better use of the space, and we expanded it to outside, making the whole event feel a bit less crowded than it did that first year. Through both events, we were running the library as normal as we could, but finding a quiet place to read the paper was practically impossible. As I said, this year we moved more of the shelving around, which did also impact access to some of the collection because of where we moved those shelves to. Through the event, compared to other Saturdays and in the following week or two, we noticed an increase in borrowing and memberships, which corresponds to the larger number of people coming through the door. And it shows us that it's a great way to showcase our collection and programs with new people, to reach new people. And why we did it is the biggest one is because we thought it would be cool. My colleague Yogi, who's here in the meeting and a co-convener, we were inspired by a presentation that we went to see, a new carding presentation with the Library Con at Mill Park. And we're also aware of other library-based conventions happening around Australia. We've been attending certain conventions and other exhibitions regarding gaming and pop culture over the years, and we wanted to have something similar but close to home, and we thought, let's do it ourselves. We wanted King Con to be an event that taps into the popularity of comics and games to bring the whole family together. And we wanted to offer an opportunity for people who may not be able to afford or handle attending one of the big conventions. So we wanted to offer them a similar experience in their own community and at no cost. That was a big thing for us, doing it at low or no cost. Especially these days with the increased cost of living, having fun, free activities for the whole family, a really great way to give back to our communities. We aim to bring people together to share common interests along a wide spectrum: comics, video games, board games, TV series, and fandoms. King Con celebrates these things and sends the message that everybody's welcome to the library, and these are also part of our community and culture. From the beginning, the management team at Kingston Libraries has been enthusiastically supporting us where we needed it, and ensuring the working group had the freedom to make King Con the best it could be. At the heart of it, King Con aims to provide an opportunity for like-minded people to meet and connect with each other. By showcasing the many facets of our library service, we're hoping to demonstrate the library as a place to go to fill the human need of connection in a safe and welcoming environment. It was planned as a really community-focused event with the intent of attracting families and individuals from the city of Kingston and surrounds. As I mentioned, we had over 1,700 people the first year, 2,200 the next, and that included such a diverse range of people. We had families and kids, from babies to late primaries. We had groups of teens and young people attending with friends, and a lot of those engaged with our cosplay competition. And we also had adults just coming to enjoy the vibe. It was a really delightful day, and seeing the library buzzing with so many people talking and engaging with the activities, and so many of them came in costume too. We believe people came for so many different reasons. Some came to meet the authors and see the talks. Others, a lot of the kids came for the Minecraft and Mario Kart. D&D was quite popular, and it was a way for us to funnel people into our ongoing Minecraft and D&D sessions as well. Lots of people came for the cosplay, and just to see the spectacle of it all as well. So a few quick and dirty tips that I could think of if you were planning on doing something similar yourselves, is to start planning early. So back in September, we started planning for our upcoming one again in May. And even then, sort of as we had similar timelines for our previous events, and we found ourselves not panicking, but scrambling a little bit towards the end. Especially when you're liaising with outside people, getting an author to come in, it can take some time for them to get back to you. Or if you're working part-time like I do, you send an email and then you're off for a few days and then they respond, and it can really drag it out. So make sure you've got plenty of time. We found having a working group really helps spread the workload around, so no one person was overloaded. We've had 7 people in our core working group each year, and that seems to work quite well for us. But we'll also get as much help from other people as we can externally, like from the wider team. Your budget will disappear very quickly, similar to the comics extravaganza. We had a budget of $10,000 and we used it all. So yeah, knowing your space, as others have said, is really, really important. Figuring out how people will use the space, or walk between the projector screen and where people are sitting to try and get to that next bit if you don't set it up properly is a lesson that I learned. So really try and have a walkthrough and set up your space as best you can beforehand. Coordinate your procedures with everyone who's working on the day. So have it written down so you can do a handover. Here's what we're expecting to happen on the day. Here's how you troubleshoot all the little problems. And last one is have fun. Get into the spirit of it and be ready to be properly exhausted by the end of it. yeah, so our next installment's coming soon. Keep an eye on our socials and website for the return of King Kong. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Fel. And finally, we have Stacey O'Brien, as I bring up my notes here, from Comic Gong, from Wollongong City Libraries. Comic Gong is a celebration of comics, gaming, pop culture, and cosplay, and the people who create and love them, attracting over 10,000 fans and stands of all ages. It is a fun, immersive, and inclusive experience for all ages. So take it away, Stacey.
Perfect. Okay. So my name's Stacey O'Brien. So I'm the coordinator of the Community Connections and Learning team for Wollongong City Libraries. And my colleague Roseanne, who wasn't able to join us today, was the service team leader of collections. She's the real expert of Comic Gong, having been involved from the very beginning. But I was the project leader for 2024. So I'll, I suppose, talk about my experience from leading the team for the first time, which was quite a steep learning curve. So we began in 2013. So I've been going for basically 11 years now. Our very first Comic Gong had 1,300 attendees, 20 exhibitors, a costume competition, comic workshops and anime screening, and some circus performers, kids craft, really a family event, and was held at Corrimal Community Centre. So we've come quite a long way from the first event. So as you'll see, we've grown a lot over the years and adapted to quite a lot of adversity. You'll see here our Comic Gong posters, which are kind of a bit of a brand now that's become synonymous with Comic Gong. We're lucky enough to have our artwork designed by Marcelo Baez every year, who I'm sure most of you know, draws for Marvel, some of Ando's books. So he makes an artwork every year and that becomes an amazing poster. Obviously in 2020, we had the pandemic year and Comic Gong didn't occur. 2021, it returned in a huge way. In 2023, we had an adapted event as there were some works in the arts precinct where some of our activities happen. So had to adapt there. They had a cosplay and family youth day instead. And then in 2024, which I'll talk about in a minute, we had the rain, which was interesting to say the least. So on the 11th of May this year, from 10 till 4 p.m, we had Comic Gong 2024. Over 9,000 new and returning visitors, which actually was slightly down on numbers. There's usually around 10,000, but given how wet everything was, that was still quite amazing. We had feedback, so our attendees and exhibitors had a 4.3 out of 5-star rating for the day, so that was quite fantastic. 5 venues planned for Comic Gong, so Comic Gong spreads beyond the library as it's grown over the years. So we had the library, the town hall, the art gallery, Lower Crown Street, and then the arts precinct, which we end up having to cancel the events there because it was outdoors and the rain was torrential. Our budget for Comic Gong in 2024 was around $50,000, so it's grown quite huge over the years from where it started. That is drawn from a special projects budget, sponsorship, and Friends of the Library donations. Our exhibitors, so I'll talk about the locations a little bit more soon, but our exhibitors, which are located in the town hall, we had 73 people in there this time around, which was pretty much filled to the brim, and 28 performances and activities. A lot of those had to move into the library, so that made the library quite amazing. We had a real focus on accessibility this year, which is something we've been working towards. So accessible parking options, a viewing area in the cosplay competition, which I'll be able to show you just with that picture there, which was really great for people to be able to easily access the competition and the stage. Really good signage and paths of travel. We had a quiet space in the town hall that operates every year with 2 staff that are there all day for people to be able to access that. Shaded areas, which we didn't really need in the end. We needed cover, if anything. A really great social story on how to access Comic Gong. We had some pre-tours the day before, so some local high schools were able to bring students through to walk the venue, which was really great. And we'd also like to look at having some accessible viewing maybe the morning of, particularly in the exhibitor hall that gets quite busy. So for people that would like to have access early, that might be something to look into in the future. So our team structure, obviously our team is crucial to the event operating well. We meet planning begins in August. We had a team this year of around 10 people, library staff from all different roles and parts of the library. On the day, we have designated team leaders that are allocated to each site, and they kind of keep those locations running. This year, we had amazing volunteers, so we put a call out in late January for volunteers to express their interest. We had about 43 people attend an information session. And then we had 20, I think it was about 28 volunteers that worked on the day, varying hours across different locations. And we put them, they were able to sort of elect a crew essentially for activities or exhibitors or comic or cosplay, that kind of thing. So having those additional hands was amazing. And they're also now library volunteers that can continue to support library services going forward as well. Our project management plan and Teams group planner I'll talk about in a second. And obviously a lot of work goes into our website, social media, amazing digital team that are very supportive and assist us with that. So our project management plan is kind of like what we live in for the whole period of time. And it's almost triggering to look at it, to be honest, after spending my life staring at it. Pretty much where everything goes. We draw the information from this to create event day manuals that sit in every location with all of the emergency information, run sheets, rosters, everything else that goes in there. But pretty much at every meeting, we would go through and keep everything on track using this document, activities, everything sits in here pretty much. So that's in Excel. The other thing we used for the first time was Teams, so Teams Planner. This was really helpful for the activities because we were able to allocate tasks to people and then update their progress, particularly with quotes and invoices, correspondence with different providers. So that was a really good tool that I think we would use probably a bit more going forward. Site maps. So obviously it's essential to have really good maps for us to know where everything is. Our main map we need obviously for our DAs and things like that anyway to use the different sites, but it does show all of the emergency services, bins, access that we need for the day on there. So our locations, so we have activities in the library, the art gallery, the arts precinct, which is basically a grassed area, if you haven't been to Wollongong, across from the library, and the town hall and Lower Crown Street Mall. So the town hall is the place for cool stuff to look at and buy. So basically exhibitors come from all over the state, sometimes interstate, to exhibit at Comic Gong. As you can see, quite jam-packed, but yeah, probably our most popular site on the day. I think there was about 8,000 people throughout the day that visited the town hall, even in the rain, to look at everything to buy. So that occurs through an EOI process quite early on, and we try to fit in pretty much everybody if we possibly can. For that one, in the library, so a lot of family-focused activities across the 2 floors of the library, and we actually spread out into the customer service area this time as well. So things like arcade games, badge making obviously is insanely popular, face painting, we had circus workshops. We end up moving all of our roving performers inside. So there was gigantic bumblebee characters and people throwing things and flipping and everything all over the library all day, which was amazing. In the art gallery is where the cosplay competition is held. We have a competition for children. So I think I can't remember the age groups. I think it's up to 5 years. And then we have a primary age children, youth, and then adults. And then we have a groups activity as well, which is really exciting to look at. You can see some of the pictures there. We have 2 amazing hosts that come and join us every year to host the competition. And yeah, that gets quite full in there throughout the day. We actually had our prize donated this year from Illustrious. So it was actually like a bespoke prize that replicated the character on the Comic Gong t-shirt that we get created every year. So that was really cool. That was one of our winners. In Lower Crown Street Mall, the plan was to have activities sort of happening in the bottom end of the mall, the Batmobile, a stage with performers, but due to the rain, we had to change a lot of that this time around. Some of the local businesses were still able to cater to some of the activities, and our K-pop dancers, we moved up into the mall. So we had to be quite reactive, pretty much a day out from Comic Gong this year, just to try and fit in as much as we possibly could. In previous years, they have had exhibitors all the way up into the mall and put marquees in there, and they're able to sell and expand the exhibitors up into the mall just because of the growing interest every year, trying to find space for everybody. The Arts Precinct is, you can see this area here. So in the past and in 2024, the plan was to have our Spider-Man show, which is fantastic. Archery, we have the LARPers there, rock and roll wrestlers. So lots of different interactive activities for people to look at. We usually station St John's Ambulance there as well. And our big information tent is normally there. But yeah, this is obviously not a picture from 2024. So why Comic Gong? So obviously aligns really well with the Wollongong City Library strategy. So delivering programs, events and activities to enrich and empower our community. Ensure that diversity and inclusion are at the core of all of our programs, events and activities. Maximise membership, visitation and participation. And provide opportunities for our community to learn and connect by volunteering. So that's why we do it to ourselves. We promote the collection and membership, and we reach traditional non-users. And then just some photos to show you at the end. You can see one of our con artist band that normally robes around. We normally have a cosplay parade that happens in the middle of the day where everyone can join the parade and show off their costumes. That band normally follows them around. We obviously had to reposition them. Our information desk there with our staff, lovely staff members, and the kids cosplay competition at the top. And then just a few more pictures here of our, so Steampunks, Vagabonds, our cosplay guardian. And that's about it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. That was great. Thank you to all our panelists. I've seen the chat's been quite busy, so while the rest of the committee is getting any questions, I did see one. It was to I think it was to Stacey about how did you get the feedback?
Yep. So we have a survey. So just a Microsoft Forms survey, quite simple. And then we actually have, so in 2024, we actually had volunteers, and that was part of their role to walk around with the QR code. We also had paper copies and asked people to complete the survey, and obviously thank them for their feedback. We had about, I think, around 400 responses to the survey this year, which is actually quite good, to be honest. And yeah, so that's kind of the best way that we can do that. But you really do need to make sure that you're reminding people to fill it out, because if you just leave posters up on the wall, it just gets lost.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. So any questions, please do put them in the chat, and we'll get to them. While that's all happening, I've got a question for everyone. One of the things that I always find we're all librarians, so we've all had that thing of, oh, it must be nice to sit and read all day, and people are always so surprised when they find out that there's so much more to librarianship than that. So my question to everyone who was on the panel is, what is the most surprising thing about running these events that you found? And it might be easy just to go through in the order that we heard from you before. So Sarah and Sabina first. Sorry.
Sabina, I'm not sure what you want to say, but for me, there was a huge learning around how cosplay is a really attractive way into a public space for neurodiverse kids. So that was really surprising, and lots of them, they didn't want to talk about their costumes, but they were very happy to be in character. And that's a audience that we often talk about in libraries and what we can do for them. Well, that was very clear evidence of something that we could do that that had never occurred to me before. And we got a lot of feedback from parents that was something that they really appreciated for their families. Sabina, do you want to add something else?
No, certainly echoing that, and people being able to meet other people with similar interests and families and things like that. So definitely making different connections, definitely.
That's great. Thank you. Dennis?
Surprise isn't the right word, more like reaffirm. All of the creators that were in the Artist Alley and the people that participated in the panel discussions were so enthusiastic, and it just kind of reaffirmed that sense of community and that love of the graphic form, really. It was lovely to see.
Thank you. And Fel?
Yeah, echoing Dennis there, just how enthusiastically people jumped on board the program. Like, yeah, both all the like the outside groups that we had to facilitate things, but also the public and everyone who turned up. Like, they just grabbed the event with both hands and ran with it, and it was a really wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, and thank you. And Stacey?
Yeah, so just obviously reiterating everything that everybody has said. For me, just the diversity and age ranges from 0 to 100 attending in the one day. And then I think even for us, just given how awful and the rain was and the amount of changes we had to make at the last minute, how accommodating and happy people were to basically move around and adapt, just shows how much they love the event, I suppose. So it's great.
Yeah, it's great. I want to, before we get in, I've seen some more questions come through. Before we get into those, I want to follow up on what Dennis said, and I want to add a acknowledgement from Alia Graphic about how supportive creators and the Australian comics industry has been. Because I know we've got some creators in the audience today interested in what libraries are doing in this space, but Alia Graphics had really great relations with all creators across Australia, publishers, all this, and comic book stores. So I just wanted to mention that. But moving on to the next question, I think this one was again for Sarah. Was did you ask people how they found out about the event when you got the feedback? Sorry, not Sarah. This was for Stacey. Sorry, did you ask people how they found out about the event?
Yeah, we did. I'm happy to share. I can share some of that, some screenshots of the feedback too, if you like, to people that are interested. I'll put my email in the chat later on. But yes, we asked that. We asked questions particularly about membership as well, which is quite interesting. So we found that sort of like approximately 50% of people that attend Comic Gong are not actually library members. So that's a really great outcome to get people through the doors, I suppose, as well. But yeah, we do ask them that question as well.
Excellent, thank you. And we've had a question: how many library staff worked your events in total? So, easy to go around again, starting with Sarah and Sabina.
We had 18 in total, and the question is how many were on the service desk. Well, we had a couple of people allocated to library, but that was pretty loose. There wasn't much library work done that day. The next day, there was lots of books to shelve. Also, when I was outside the library at the start looking for vendors to help them in, and a few people wandered up with books in their hands. And it was good to be able to say, if you want to study today, perhaps you need to go upstairs to the quiet space and don't come into the library because it's not going to be a suitable venue for you. So, yeah, that's how we ran it.
Excellent, thanks. And Dennis?
We had 11 dedicated staff on the day. They didn't do full days. It was staggered. We had 4 staff start at like 8 in the morning to help set up. The 3 main people in the group worked the full day, but we had other staff coming and going to staggered, basically. So we started with 4 at the middle of the day. All 11 would have been there. And then at the end of the day, it would have been back to around 4 or 3. I think total hours would have been about 58, 60 around there, divided between the 11 staff.
Excellent, thank you. Fel?
So we had 11 staff dedicated to King Con on the day. So that 11 included the 7 from the working group, and then we did an EOI for other library staff to jump in. And we had separate library staff running the library floor. So it would have been 3 on the day, so 14 in total. But 11 dedicated to King Con, and we were there all day. It's a big day.
Thank you, and Stacey?
Yeah, so there was around 10 staff working in library operations on the day, so effectively keeping the library open, but really assisting the events in the library as well. The team itself, around 10, 11 of us worked across the day, across the sites. The team leaders worked very long days, so 6 till 6 basically. And then we had around 28 volunteers as well that were supporting all of the sites, some working 4 hours, some working all day.
Well, thank you. Now, I realise it's just gone 3, so if we're packed a lot into the hour, so if I don't know how the panelists feel about this, but I can stay a bit longer. Anyone who has to go, feel free to go. We can stay a bit longer and answer some more questions, but I'll do the farewell and stay in touch. And of course, if the panelists need to go too, that's perfectly fine. So I want to start this wrap-up bit by thanking all the panelists. It's wonderful insight into these amazing events. Thank you. And are there dates for next year's for any of these yet?
We're looking at the first weekend of October.
Not for us just yet. We're still in discussions. We need to access the budget again. It keeps growing every year. It all comes down to money.
Yep.
Yeah, not for us either.
Fel?
King Con will be back on the Saturday, the 24th of May in 2025.
Cool. So for King Kong, keep that. Make sure you get that date in your diary. For the others, keep checking the library websites and all of that. They'll have the information up soon, I'm sure. So then thank you to everyone who joined us for the webinar. You can stay up to date with Alia Graphic on our website, which is graphic.alia.org.au, and I'm sure one of the committee will be putting that in the chat as well. And then you can also email aliagraphicinfo@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we also have a podcast and a YouTube channel, both of which you can find details for on our website. And the podcast has creator chats and roundups and all sorts of stuff. And the YouTube will have this webinar, and it also has video versions of some of the creator chats and just lots of great resources. And yeah, I think that's everything. And one of the other committee members can jump in if I've missed saying something. But thank you all again, and keep reading comics.